Okay, welcome to the March 19th meeting of the Dudley Board of Water and Sewer Commissioners. I do have to advise you that this meeting is being recorded, and we start every meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, minutes from March 5th.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to accept the minutes of March 5th as written.
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Unanimous. Mr. Abrams is not here yet, so I guess we'll go to the budget.
Okay. Let's start with the water one.
Okay.
I
What are we looking at?
didn't
Pretty
touch,
colors.
didn't touch anything in any of the actual jobs. The standby and everything else stayed the same. The overtime was at 85,000. Historically, we went back and looked. It's been roughly around 80. The extra 5 gives us that buffer not to have to move anything around later on, in case there's a major catastrophes or anything else like that.
That, right,
And
sorry, that 80, how many call-outs did you have? Was there a lot? Was there, do we know? I mean,
no, that is historically on average. Just looking at the other things.
did we have more than normal this past?
No. I mean, you had some because of the construction and whatnot, but then after that, now you've added at the treatment plant where we had, before we were in the treatment plant, we had roughly less than 20 alarms that could go off. Just in the treatment plant alone, I have 93. So, and then you have to check them. Then with main breaks, right now, we've had 3 breaks within probably a week and a half. But there's nothing out of the ordinary. You're always gonna have things like with chlorine gassing, high and low alarms that we can't get away from. That I, personally, as the operator, I can't get away from. You guys are more than welcome to ask the state to change the alarm requirements.
It is what it
If
is.
80 was
But
the average, I think we should budget for the average.
Yes, but this is a pay line item, so it gets harder to move from different line items into a pay scales versus just like general expenses. You can move that around within other things that you have to spend money on. When you get into pays, from my understanding, anything that's dedicated to paying employees, unless there is zero expectation of the person coming back, like when John Meehan retired at the very end of the year, we were allowed to use some of that money for operating expenses or to cover bills, but throughout the year, it's locked. That's one of the very, very few lines that you're locked into. So, without having to go to a warrant or a meeting.
Still, that's still a 15% cut from last year.
Yeah. We've been able to manage it better and whatnot. And also, that's including figuring in the union contract increases and anything else like that, so. The differential pay we very rarely use. That's mainly right now, lately, we've used that to pay out to the highway guys that we've had to bring on digs and whatnot, but also there was questions about the non-union employees and their raises, and versus having to go to the meeting, a fall meeting or anything else you decide to do. That's why I added in the merit and increased it a little bit. That way you could use that if and wish you decide to do it, and just for ease of getting that done and giving you guys a benchmark maybe of what you could spend or not spend.
Okay.
The electric and gas, Justin was fantastic in helping us get some better costs. And we had it at Justin's sheet, which unfortunately I wasn't able to really get out here for you guys, but I think Jen was able to print for them.
Yeah.
As I said, about 150 that we should budget.
Yeah, so what you're looking at on this sheet here is all the water accounts annual KWH for calendar year 2024. So we have a January through December, so we see the seasonality. And then what that would calculate out at our new rates. So the blue box on the bottom there shows we're roughly projected to spend $117,000 plus or minus with the new rate using historical consumption data. The green down below is what we would have been paying, what we basically were paying up through November on the old rates before we renegotiated. So it's about a $33,000 savings, which does explain a little bit why this year might be a little out of whack, because we're paying at the higher rate for most of the fiscal year.
Yeah.
So
If you do out the percentages, if for where we're at in the budget, 68% of time through the budget, where we're at right now, we should have been budgeted at over 200 to 220 to give us a good cushion on it. So we're a little bit behind on this one, but with the savings, we'll be back in line. And also, we're paying the propane out of that line for, so that's why I added the extra 10,000. That's
and this spreadsheet here is just the electric, so
yeah. So
yeah, the utilities need to be factored into that, but
we have.
I would say comfortably, because I carried 15% contingency there for market fluctuation and demand. And then I added 30% on distribution charges. We could increase that, because I've noticed, just reviewing all the bills, we were getting hit with a lot of demand charges in the summer months, and some of that's gonna be stuff that's just running constantly, I'm assuming, and so you can't control it. So you could, industry average is somewhere between 20 and 30% on distribution, so you could make that maybe 35 if we wanted to increase that a little bit, but like I said, there's a 15% buffer in that call it 118.
Yeah. Nobody knows what propane, and we do have oil for one thing still, or no, we have two locations for propane now.
Yes, and oil it's in sewer, so nothing, no oil and water.
No. So not knowing where the market on the propane will go and just watching how much we're using. That's where I felt comfortable at, just in case.
Okay,
What do you have the electricity at? Am I reading it wrong?
160.
160, but if I had it
it's
at,
electricity and gas.
I had it at 220 for this year. If I didn't give Justin's numbers, that's just projecting out what we're using right now. If we wanted to have a fully funded, correct electrical account right now for this fiscal year. Cell phone SCADA, that just individual bills. And the previous year we had funded it for another $5,000 because we need to do some work outside of the contract of building the treatment plant to get done. The metering, we're still buying 1 to 2 pallets of them a year. Because of staffing and other situations with the construction and whatnot, we weren't able to go as heavy as we wanted to, changing out the older box style radios that are outside the house, and they're dying, and they seem to be maturing faster now during our meter readings. Okay. So I foresee having to do it at least next year. I don't know about the following year after it. That was more of a note for me.
Okay.
Longevity, Jen has hit her 10 years, so it just adjusted to be able to cover hers.
Place it.
The reverse 911
Okay.
code red, I just put a 5% increase just because, assuming that didn't increase us 3 to 5%. Right before I got over here, I got the numbers on the chemicals. They are only increasing 3%, it looks like, so far this year, if I did the quick math on it. So I probably could reduce that a little bit, and instead of the 8% increase that they've done over the past 2 years on us.
So you're gonna put that down to 3?
What?
You're gonna put that down to 3?
Yeah, I have to grab a calculator.
Okay.
The GAC, after talking about how we're gonna end up having to do it, I had initially $1,000, I put it to $5,000. Probably what will cost us to have Ty and Bond or a company like that to do the numbers, and because our volume of water to be able to flush and backwash and the first initial one, they give us the formulas that we need. And then after we get that, we can bid it out and go to bid.
That number would be, to that 150, 3% would bring it to 154.5. So I'd say 155.
155, okay. Where were we at? The GAC. And that's, if we have to do it this year, we possibly could get proactive in thinking that we're gonna do the next fiscal year, but we could get the formulas and everything else lined up so we can do it a little faster.
Yep.
Any other costs on that could come out of the capital line item. Rich did give us some numbers. Retirement, that is, the numbers are provided by Rich in the blue.
Okay.
Operating expenses, and especially after latest things that have happened in the country. I agree with Sean that our prices are going to probably increase, and even with the 5%, we typically return back over 5% out of our operating account. So figure just level fund it and absorb it in and be a little bit more fiscally responsible as we can as things come on. Indirects will be addressed later. Next line, education and licenses. It's a education year or renewing year, and that should cover most of the guys and me. I have mine, my hours done, but I'm sure some of the other guys are short right now, and they've gone up a little bit in price, but not substantially. The sampling, because we are now in the treatment plant and we have the reduced sampling schedule, we don't have to sample so much for PFAS, which was a pricey sampling, so we're able to reduce it by half. Insurance, that was provided by Rich.
Well, we got the number, we got all the Rich numbers early.
Yep.
Good.
Yeah, these are numbers from Rich. There is no ask for Rich later or assuming or anything else. These are
Okay.
numbers from Rich. Gasoline, just did the average, what we've been spending, and reduced there is still a little bit of a cushion there, just in case. But we were, with the running around a lot with the constructions, having to run back and forth, which had put us higher than normal, than I would think. But I think the 10,000 there for the gasoline easily covers it.
You were 9 in FY '23. How'd we do in that?
What was that?
You were 9,000 in FY '23,
Yes.
and then,
And then you'll
yeah, so the.
budget it.
Yeah,
That's
those were the
more-
two constructions years,
Like I say,
like
'cause
with the
24,
PFAS
20,
plant
yeah.
and the pipes and the mixing, the blending main, the temporary treatment go over in well 7, we're fairly busy. I believe we were short on the year of 9, but we weren't that short.
Yeah, because that's the last, like, regular year before you had a lot of construction, right?
Yeah. Medicare and group health insurance are from Rich. Leak detection program, that has been basically the same cost, and the extra little money, we've actually had to bring them in a couple times to actually help locate a leak or a pipe. Even we have bought some of the equipment to do it ourselves, but at times it's better to bring in somebody who does it on a day-to-day basis, just to make sure, especially during construction or some of the bigger digs. Safety, brought it down to 5. We do need some road signs, some other equipment and things like that, but none of the bigger pieces. And if we do need to go over the bigger pieces, hopefully we can put in for the MIA grant or anything up like that. And also we get into capital and everything else for anything else larger. Engineering, kept it at 50,000. We still have the Bates Road pressure study an issue. I foresee us having to do a little bit more with tie and bond before we move forward with some sort of plan to address it with DEP. I don't know as for funding it in the future, because it looks substantial, the area that it's covering. So tie and bond will still want to get paid. Bob had asked for some things to dedicate the capital line to. For the water, it's 4 log. If we do it ourselves, that's covering some of the SCADA equipment, us digging and installing it, and then again, the SCADA and the programming and everything that goes along with it. I assume there's gonna be some cost from DEP and whatnot, where they'll want some of it proved and engineered. The debt services,
Pressure hydrants?
the pressure hydrants, I'm
How much
sorry.
do those cost, roughly?
Roughly, I'm waiting on the quotes, but they're about $1,000 more than a regular, so they're about $4 to $5 grand a piece. And the $5 grand might be installed. He's trying to get, like, these are retrofit ones, where we can just drop them in, for instance, on the top of Sawmill, the 2 pressure zones, we can put them there. We can put one down in Oxford Road, where we keep having problems. We couldn't put one over in Perryville because the cell service right now is not good. And possibly you could put one someplace right near the fire station on Main Street, where we can see what's going up that way, and then see how they work out for this year. And then there's other locations, but
Okay,
and the debt service, we got most of the stuff today. It looks like one of our debts is coming off this year. And also, Jeff Faulkner was able to help me out, and he got me the amortization schedule for the PFAS plant, which will reduce once we return some of the money that's gonna be unused. He believes it's gonna be around near 300,000. I don't know if it's over or under. I gave you a very quick spreadsheet of what it is. Those are the 2 payments a year on each one that we make. It totals out to 1.15 million. We had last year 1.453 million, I believe, which we were able to reduce it, which,
yeah, 1.4 down to 1.1.
yes. Last year also, it was funded to the point where we had assumed that we would have been closing out some of the things with the PFAS. So we had funded that way, so the money went to retained earnings, which at this time is the next meeting, will be the hearing. I'm hoping, after looking at it this year, we may be able to avoid anything that is substantial increase,
Okay,
hopefully.
good job. Anybody have any, is there any more movement on this? Any more movement gonna be on this?
We could, that's your purview, if you like me adjust things or look at
Well, that chemical number will change,
the chemical number will change. We can reduce that by the 7,000.
7,000, yeah. That cuts it down to 585. Yeah.
155.
I mean, also, just for preference and ease sake, I put the
final, yeah.
differential and merit there, and just to give it ease of access, or numbers for you guys to the budget and shoot.
fine.
But besides that,
Good job.
Thanks, Jeff.
Okay, so,
I do need to confirm, I will, because we only got the numbers today on the debt.
what I was gonna suggest is, why don't we, and at our meeting before the public hearing, we can, or during,
Yep.
during that meeting, we can adopt the budgets. Or do they have to be submitted before then?
March 31st.
So we're not meeting before that.
Or March 28th, I apologize. Maybe the 28th.
Okay,
Before we accept it, we want to do indirects.
That's actually, yes,
Yeah,
that's the
that
other
indirect.
moving number.
yep, okay.
Do we want to?
We'll have to see what that works out to. Okay, why don't we, go back, we can vote on that later on tonight.
Yep.
tonight.
The sewer is fairly similar. Rich, you can see, was able to get us all our numbers, just for a little bit of brevity, so we can,
And unless, I mean, you don't have to go through every line, but,
Yeah.
I do need to,
if there's anything that,
on the electrical, we could put it back to 30,000 I don't see the goalpost moving all that much percentage-wise.
No, I can run the same analysis on that if you want. I just need the sewer bills.
Why did you, just going through it, the differential you doubled?
What? I'm sorry.
Going through this real quick, the differential, went from,
Differential pay merit.
Merit, that's the same thing.
Shares half of the non-union
Jen
person.
and George are paid 50/50 from the sewer, the water and the sewer enterprise funds. And that just splits and gives you a fund. If you, differential pay is to pay the highway guys and/or anything else we accrue after it for the town employees. There's a pay line, and also it's not used as much or fully yearly, but it also covers us if there's a catastrophe, such as we lose 2 guys, where we're gonna have to borrow somebody consistently or anything else like that. Webster processing, I know you guys have had meetings, I just increased it overall by 10%.
Yeah, I think that's what we,
Line 18.
that's when we were at Webster, was at 10%.
Yeah.
I don't know where you guys stand with that, but that's,
Does that include the supplemental payments that we were making for the true up?
I believe so.
That includes all of that, okay, cool.
Yes.
All right.
So that was the old number, just plus 10%.
yeah,
Okay. Look at how that number is screwed.
Again, longevity, Jen is 10 years into her sentence. Again, on operating expenses, it usually return around 5+%, hoping that absorbs any of the market increases that we have. And Bob also had asked for, sorry, I got sidetracked. The engineering, the I&I projects throughout the whole entire time. Bob had asked for a specific line item for I&I, funded it for $20,000. That could give us 2 to 3 miles a year, from his rough estimates what it costs. For the inspections, I figured the repairs would be, at that point, you just put it on a warrant article and just schedule it in and
Yep.
use retained earnings. Capital, this is allocated to changing or at least one pump in one of the older stations, so we get some spacing between the years of service on the motors, and that is including a new buy instead of a rebuild, and finishing the mission system upgrades, so we have all our stations on the same system, and also a couple possible add-ons, and which would be something like there's a rain monitor that you could add on, which would be a couple, but they're not a yearly expense, it's like some of the other, not bells and whistles, but for us to better address the I&I issues.
And we don't have a debt service number for sewer?
I didn't get any debt on numbers on that from him, but I know that we have
Yeah.
have one that's coming, but you're in the middle of it, so I don't know when that will end up amortized.
Which one is that? Sewer, everything's done on sewer.
No, you just did a borrowing for, I thought,
We had the engineering, the Potash Brook engineering. And that, but that's on a question. That's a
Yeah,
warrant
that
article.
wasn't- Yeah,
but I didn't receive any type of debt schedule or anything else for the sewer department, so
It's
right
just the
now.
I&I, and the I&I is long, that's been, those big I&I projects were all
Funded through,
closed out 2 years ago.
and funded through,
That's funded through the SRF.
and we also funded some things through our retained earnings.
Right.
So that's why
yeah, that's probably,
I'm
yeah.
saying,
There's gotta be something. Maybe
could
there
be something,
isn't.
but there also could be nothing.
There's gotta be the I&I, those I&I projects. Those were done through the SRF.
I'll do a little research, I'll ask Jeff for a time bond.
Okay,
His guy was very responsive.
okay. Good, so we can address that again, once we get more firm numbers from, that's that. The electricity, oops, sorry, for all you at home that watch this. Was there anything else for the budget? Any other numbers?
I
Seems to be
don't
pretty
believe
good.
so. In the OneDrive, there are all the different ways you can look at our expenditures, instead of killing a redwood, printing it out. I believe, I have it in mind, make sure that I'll put it into this meeting folder. If you guys wanna be able to take a look at it, it'll be on the budget folder in there.
We don't need, yeah, I mean, we don't need that to actually, work the budget, but.
No, but you can see what
We do wanna see where we are spending money.
Yes. I gave you some before, a little hastily, but.
Yep.
Also, the large file that Jen has, you can see individual, but it's, you're not able to print it out, but.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Okay, so we'll hold that off, hold a vote off on that till we hear from our friend, I think our friend, Mr. Abrams. I did see that you sent us, it was hard to read on my phone, but sent us a packet. Jen printed off, Jen did kill a half a redwood printing it off, but we all have copies of it here in front of us.
Good evening. Matt Abrahams, the Abrahams Group. Yes, when that comment was just made a few moments ago, that was my first thought as well, because it's 40 pages long, I believe.
Yes.
I did a double-sided vote.
Okay, only 20 pages. That's great. Thank you for that. Good evening, everyone. Just here with an update. So you do have an updated packet. This is the results of the work that's been done last several months, but specifically mostly over the last few weeks, even as recently as this week, just trying to get it as close to final as we can. I did work heavily with town staff this week, mainly the town treasurer, on a few things. He was very supportive of the work that was being done, a lot of double checking of numbers, bouncing ideas off one another, trying to come up with what we deemed to be the fairest way or the most reasonable way to allocate certain costs that we thought should be included. He was extremely helpful throughout the process. So I'll just give a few very high-level updates because I was here before you 2 weeks ago, and obviously things have changed a little bit. So I mentioned I met with the town treasurer. This board requested of me the last time I was here to go back to the town treasurer, talk to him again about the breakdown of time on certain water and sewer tasks. That was something that was kind of a focal point of our conversation last time and in previous meetings, which he did. He actually spent time meeting with his staff again and going back over it. There was an adjustment made to it. The percentages are lower than they were last time. I believe they were over 19% last time. Now they're down to 18.7 something. So there was attention paid to that and adjustment made related to that. I just want to make sure you were aware. This board also requested of me last time I was here to try and gain additional information from the town administrator's office on tasks that the town administrator's office does on behalf of water and sewer. We did go over comments that were provided to me by the town administrator last time I was here, and there was interest in gaining a little bit more information. So that information has been provided, and I did put that into the packet that you have. It's on page 2 of the town administrator section. I'll get you a page number. That's
Is that under
helpful.
admin or T?
I'm sorry?
Town, or is it under? because
So that is
it's-
page
halfway
8,
through.
well, 18, I guess it's different, maybe 9 with your
Yeah,
with
the
your
page-
double-sided.
The page number's cut off.
So each department is listed at the top of the printout. So it's the second page that lists the town administrator.
Highway, HR, MIS, town administrator, I believe. Okay. I'm assuming everything you changed is in red?
No,
Oh, I see it, Bill, there's a lot of red on here.
it's orange on my screen, but
Oh, okay.
what that is meant, what that is meant to be, those are inputs.
Okay.
In short, I think considering factoring in or thinking about how this may be used moving forward, assuming that this methodology does get adopted, those are meant as inputs because numbers change every year. So that would represent, let's say this gets adopted, this file gets used next year. Someone presumably would come to this file and say, okay, I need to put in the updated number for the next year. So that's what that cell represents. So there's a little bit more information there. I can read it, but there's a lot. And also, I did ask of the town administrator to try and give a little bit of additional context related to the legal services line that's in the town administrator's budget. That's his response is at the bottom of that page. There was a question by this board in a discussion last time that perhaps legal services expenses out of the town administrator's budget should not be included. And that comment there is a defense of why.
Contains legal expenses that benefit all of the town? Is that what the comment is?
Yeah, I don't see it.
No, you're on the right.
No,
Right here.
Down on the bottom.
bottom of the page.
It says special
Side.
desktops are largest bills, under 5 ticket bills.
Oh.
That's three years, yep.
Okay, all right.
So those two updates were in direct response to what was requested of me last time. Also, you know, the file itself last time still had things that needed to be cleaned up. Those things have been cleaned up. Took me a little bit longer to get everything in there, and I also wanted to get you as polished a version as I could going into tonight's meeting. Therefore, it wasn't sent to Jen until some point yesterday. So I know that didn't allow for a lot of ramp-up time, possibly no ramp-up time by this group to review it prior to this meeting, but just please be aware that we spent a good amount of time on this to try and get it as ready as we could. And I think it's in pretty good shape at this point. So I don't know what the interest is of this board at this point. I can walk you through it again, or we can talk a little bit more detailed about certain things. Whatever the group wants. Can answer any questions.
How'd you come up with the hydrant number?
Oh, good point. So the hydrant number I don't consider to be final. And if you look at page 1, it's still highlighted, and I have a comment there. This was work that the town treasurer and I did this week, or it might have been at the end of last week, but it was very recently. We've talked a lot about the hydrant credit and trying to wrap our arms around what it represents or how it was initially calculated, trying to make some sense of it so that we could try and come up with something that may satisfy this board, town staff, for a way to calculate it going forward. We were able to, we believe, discover what the original amount was, and that was from FY10. And we don't know how it was calculated. We still don't know. And this board knows that it just gets increased 2.5% every year. That's what happens today. So we were just kind of brainstorming, and this was the recommendation of the town treasurer, that, well, what if we did this, this, and this? So the methodology that's in there is almost like a proposal, I guess. It's not.
I know I've been trying to wrap my brain around how to figure that out.
So my understanding of of what this board is interested in related to the hydrant credit is, you have hydrants that are in town. You maintain them, you install new ones whenever that happens. I don't know how often that happens, but probably not very often, but you have done that. You treat and make available the water that is ready to go in the hydrants, which is a benefit to the town. Sometimes that water gets used for certain things, fire. We were talking about hydrant flushing as something that happens, water being used for that. And you're not compensated for that, like you would be if someone turns on their faucet, you get, I don't know if compensated is the right word, but people pay for that. But people don't pay for the water usage today on the hydrants. So we thought, well, what if we came up with a methodology where we actually throw numbers in here, and whatever it spits out, maybe that's what we end up using. So the concept behind this is, what are your costs today related to meters? I believe you might have something in your budget related to that. We could include that. So that would be maintenance of existing meters.
Hydrants, you mean?
Yeah, sorry, hydrants. Hydrants. Maintenance of existing hydrants, any installation of new hydrants if and when that happens. Those are real costs to the water sewer department, and they should be quantifiable. And then the water piece is the tricky piece, and we talked about that last time. We talked about some estimate, right? There was an idea thrown around about how we could estimate what that water usage is. What we came up with was two things. What's the water used for hydrant flushing? And it's not gonna be like a perfect calculation, because I don't think anyone measures that, right? But you might have a general sense of what it is, and you know how many hydrants get flushed per year. So maybe you calculate that. And then what is the water used for firefighting? And the town treasurer reached out to the fire chief about that. As far as I know, he has not received a response related to that, but we might be able to come up with what we consider to be an average or standard amount of water used for firefighting every year, and maybe we put a number on that.
Are you using the number for the hydrants, for the maintenance and that for the hydrants? What about all the lines that supply the hydrants? When there's a break, we have to fix it so the hydrants has water.
Okay,
Okay,
so you're talking about lines specific for the hydrants?
All the lines in town, because all the lines feed the hydrants. If there's no lines, the hydrants feed nothing.
The complete infrastructure.
Yeah,
I think that's a better way of what he's saying.
even putting a value on all of that that's been the hard part, is you're trying to put a value to it.
No, I mean, the height,
And then what percentage of it would be an offset to this?
well, it's easy enough when you talk about the hydrant flushing and the use by the fire department for putting out fires and training and such. We have to turn in our annual statistical report to the state, which has that information.
Okay.
And which coincides usually around this time of year. It's due March 31st this year.
Okay.
So, and
Then what's a new hydrant go for? I think 2,500 is probably low. I'm thinking we're probably closer to 4.
Sorry, I forgot to mention that. These numbers in here are not real numbers. I just threw numbers in that came off the top of my head.
well, I know, just looking at the cost of Bruce, 1 gallon of water. Just after doing this budget, we need to readdress the budget if that's what the actual cost is. We're in trouble.
Sorry, I should have mentioned that off the top. Those are my numbers, and they have not been validated by anyone. I just wanted to kind of show you an example of what it could look like.
As I was saying, we maintain all the lines in town which feed the hydrants, so that cost should be incorporated in.
Okay.
That's something yeah.
Okay, but also we need to be sensitive to the fact that this is going to be a credit or an offset to what the indirects number is, and
Yeah.
we don't want it to completely throw that number out of whack too, so,
Right.
yeah.
The cost to install a hydrant, no, I mean, you can have the average cost is I can run in there now, and he just bought some, George just bought some recently.
Yeah.
and get that number, but then it's the man hours and/or the time that we have to put it in or address it.
Yeah, I think.
But then there's some that if it's a hit by a car, then in theory, we're reimbursed. You know,
Not all the time.
the person who hit the hydrant's insurance should and usually
If we
cover.
bill the insurance. If we bill it.
If we know.
Yeah, and we recommend that if there's work done on a hydrant, that you want to consider labor costs, you want to consider vehicle usage, things like that, because that does matter. I think that's in here somewhere.
Okay, so that we've at least got something we can try to get some realistic numbers
Right, but,
that make sense.
yep, this was just, I don't want to say it's a
Swag,
starting
yeah.
point, because we've been
It's
talking about
something
this forever, but
is that I
it's,
keep trying to
it's something.
pull together. For example, I just, on a WAG, I went down and talked to the assessor, and the biggest fire we've had in town in the last few years was the Mace Adhesives fire. So I got the assessed value of the property before the fire and after the fire. And it's pretty significant. So the value of having water available, even though it was outside, then that's outside the hydrant system. That fire was fought with hydrant water. It wasn't fought with anything drawn out of a pond or anything else.
Yeah.
And
But that's also,
Yeah.
I don't want to say atypical, right? But,
it is very atypical.
Okay.
But it's.
right, but we
it's-
want to like consider, you can't consider like that extreme.
No,
And you also can't consider like the extreme that there's no.
no, but
firefight,
you
right?
average
gotta
that
find-
out over, average
Kind of
that
find
out
some middle ground there, right?
If that's a 10-year event, then you average it out over 10 years.
Right. Because we're
It's part of it.
trying to annualize this. This is an
Right.
annual budgetary
Right.
thing, yeah.
So can I ask what the premium charge to town for water usage, what the intent is there? It says to ensure water department benefits from this service.
Right.
Is that just a,
Should the town pay the cost of what the water is to, the cost of water to the water department? Is that what they should pay? We were thinking maybe they pay a little bit more. I don't know. It's meant to be, it's
it
meant
works
to
in our
represent
favor,
that.
so.
What's that?
It works in our favor, so.
Well, yeah, I mean,
I-
but we could get rid of that too, you know, you're providing a service, right? So,
I think there is a premium there. I don't know what that percentage actually
yeah, we
is,
just
but-
I threw in a
I
random
think it's
20.
also important to remember in this that everyone who pays a water bill also pays taxes. Everybody who pays taxes doesn't necessarily pay a water bill.
Yeah.
And that's the balance. That's the balance, because there are folks that insist that there is no value to the water department provides no value to them if they live outside the hydrant system. And that's just false. It does provide a value, and that's the offset, to me. And how to monetize that, how to put a number to that, I just don't know. I mean, this gives us something to try to go to, but I don't know how to do that.
Yeah, and we've struggled with it ever since we first started talking about it. But
So if we take this, I mean, I looked at this briefly the other day, and I could see something working out of that. There may be, some of the line items might change, but it looks like it might be a good step-off point. We might be able to find something to be able to fill in the budget this year,
yeah,
and continue to work it to try to figure out the best way to
the
do
only thing
this.
I'm just slightly worried about is if you throw real numbers in here, and then all of a sudden that number shoots way up, like 50,000, 80,000, like something like that. I don't know what it's going to be.
Do you have the spreadsheet you could send me?
Yeah.
Because I can just base it off of last year's annual statistic report and just throw the numbers in there.
Do you have hydrant-related costs that you could put in there too?
we can go cost per hydrant, and I would say to install a hydrant that is on average should only take 2 to 3 hours with 3 guys and 2 pieces of machinery. And so you'd have actually 3 pieces of machinery: dump truck, a work vehicle, a backhoe.
But what we're looking for is we're looking for not the cost to install a hydrant, what actually was spent on installing hydrants. So if there weren't any hydrants installed, then we wouldn't want to include that number in a given year. If there were, then we would.
We do on average have to change out 1 or 2 a year, and it usually comes after the flushing season. You find out which ones are broken, or sometimes it's a repair where you have to pull out the internals, and you can do things. Sometimes a rock gets down on the bottom and you can't close it again, so therefore you have to pull the whole entire hydrant. Most of our losses of hydrants are due to car crashes or an accident. So in theory, you would hope that insurance covers it, but I'd say 1 out of 3 at least aren't covered.
Yeah.
But by hit and run.
I'd say 2 out of 3 uncovered now, the way it's been going.
Yeah.
Based on, I'm just curious, why one over the other? Or maybe that's a hard question to answer.
Basically, we're not getting insurance information, we don't know who hit the hydrant, there's not police reports. More of them have been hit and runs or limited information.
That's too bad.
Winter seasons, they slide into it, hit it, snaps it, and then they were able to somehow get out of there before anybody responds.
What's your email?
PRIMOPER@dudleyma.gov.
Okay, so we need to, we're right up against it.
I will say it's an interesting way to try to figure out a cost to it.
I think it's the most reasonable I've seen to date. I mean, this actually is quantifiable. It's not just arbitrary. And I mean, you can put real numbers to this. But I mean, to your point,
We put the real numbers to see what happens, what it produces.
Yeah, and I think you know from working with me by now that I'm trying to come up with methodologies that work, that make sense, that are reasonable. But also trying to come up with methodologies, right, rather than some arbitrary thing. So this is a start. It's a good idea. We'll see where it goes.
Okay, so what are we talking about for indirect numbers for the budget? Shy of, there was one other question. Something that you said was in the letter when you sent us this, about insurance. The costs of other insurances that weren't being allocated to the
Yeah,
to the
so
enterprise.
that's part of the problem with having all these problems. Not the right word. One of the byproducts of having all these conversations is, as you continue to go over things and talk about more things, you realize, oh, hey, what about this? What about this? What about this?
You said OPEB. I don't even know I hear the OPEB number every year. I never know. I have
So
no idea what it is.
OPEB stands for Other Post-Employment Benefits. A short way of saying it is, it's a liability to communities for paying for benefits that town employees receive somewhere down the line. When they're no longer active employees, the town generally will have to be able to cover their insurances and possibly other benefits too.
Okay.
So OPEB is around to try and get communities to start funding that ahead of time rather than when it's needed. So communities are slow to adopt this idea, slow to adopt this process. And there can be a very large liability sitting there that the towns eventually have to address. And they just start chipping away by putting money away, putting money away, putting money away. So I believe that there's $10,000 in this year's budget for this, which is probably a number that is lower than it really should be, would be my guess. But that's what's in there.
Okay,
And
what
so-
were the other insurances?
The other insurance that we included was, we'll call it general or property insurance. The one that comes from MIIA, I believe is the acronym annually. And one thing that MIIA does really well for communities is they break down the insurance costs by department. So if you were to look at this letter, and I'm curious if Jen's ever seen it, it has a water column, it has a sewer column, it has a DPW column, it has a fire column, it has a police column, I believe, a town column, maybe one other. But the town is like the catch-all. If it's not one of those other ones, then it's town, right?
Okay.
So there is a water charge, there's a sewer charge that probably is directly billed to the water sewer department, I would believe.
Correct.
But there's also a town charge, and this represents like insurances tied to this building, really, and people that work in this building. And considering we've been spending time allocating costs related to that, we thought that that should be included as well. So it's just the town portion of that, which is like 116,000 of a total of 700,000, something like that. So we're taking that 116, I believe, and we're allocating it a similar way to how we're doing it for the other town employees. And I know there's a ton in this file now, but if you were, it's in there. It's, I think it's in the treasurer's area, so you can look at that yourself.
Now that it's a paper copy.
Yeah, that's a new development. There have been some tweaks since you last saw it. I wouldn't say they're major tweaks, more minor, but that is something that has changed. And obviously, there's a lot in there.
Is there a way to know what's changed from last time to this time? Did you italicize, or did you change a color, or?
No, probably should have, but I did not. But if it's helpful, I could put together a list for you.
Okay, that's just, okay.
Back on the hydrants, are we gonna put in something for maintaining the lines? The cost we incurred with all the breaks and that feed the hydrants.
I mean, I guess we could talk about it. How would we even quantify that?
I just have an idea. Could we, part of the hydrant cost, could you just allocate a percentage of our, because we own maintaining the entire system, whether there's a hydrant or not to feed
Right.
all the meters. But could we, there's a percentage of that is tied directly to the hydrants. I don't know, is it, Brian, is it 1%, 2%?
What for?
To maintain the distribution system, what percentage of that maintenance cost is just associated with the hydrants?
That'd be hard to.
I'm thinking you make it a percentage, because Tom's, there's cost to maintain the line to the hydrant.
Yeah,
but-
we could do it off of the numbers I have here. Fire protection and training, 1.75 million in 2023. Hydrant and water main flushing, 12.5 million gallons. And what percentage of the 175 million gallons was allocated to just doing that?
And then take a,
I have 1.3.
so you back into a number, so you get the.
And that's the only way you can
percentage
come up with the actual numbers that we
of-
have.
The percentage of water use would then be the percentage of the total system maintenance. Yeah, that could work.
I don't know another way to do it.
Well,
I mean,
in your
it's
methodology
basically.
right now, you're kind of calculating that with the
Yeah.
gallons we use for, there's a line here where you're putting in gallons of water used for hydrant flushing, gallons of water used for firefighting.
Yeah, those are estimates of what is typically used. That's not an actual measured thing.
Right.
Brian, do we know, like, how much time was spent or how much money was spent on all the repairs to the lines over the year?
Not offhand, it's not a normal thing we've kept track of over the years, I don't think.
We could get that, some kind of number like that, a percentage off of that.
Yeah, I'm keep going back to his formula as it is and see where that's gonna work out. But you could, but it's,
So what I'm thinking is you take this first line cost, because I like this methodology just because it's clean and neat. you can actually put numbers to it.
Yes.
So somebody could verify it. And I think if you, the cost to maintain existing hydrants right here, maybe it's, you know, then it's a no, it's 1% of.
My only question is, being able to figure out some of these numbers later on for cost per gallon or cubic foot that we do, is when we're for instance, whatever department it is, and it's 19%. Is that going off of the budgeted 19%? Or is that at the end of the year? Because what happens if there were $100,000 budget, but they return 10%, or it's used into other departments, it's pulled someplace else in the town? Because we don't have a line item vote. Because I know some departments in town, John has to take and fund other departments through that. So it wasn't actually a
Just to
real.
take from one department to fund another one that fund a department that overspends with the money that, from a department that underspends.
Just so the only question is so I can figure out, we returned $200,000 into retained earnings, so our budget should have only really been 2.6 million, and therefore that changes the cost of the water per gallon versus anything else like that. Because that's how you gotta be able to put into this formula.
Yeah.
You just have to know, is it the previous year, like how do we?
Yeah, I didn't make that clear in here. Yeah, it would have to be, we'd have to decide if we were gonna use budgeted numbers or actual numbers, I guess. And if it was actual, you would have to use a year from the recent past, right? Probably the most recently completed fiscal year.
Last year's, yeah.
Yeah,
Just because, for instance, on ours is because one of our projects completed late, therefore the funding of it changed, and we only had to pay the principal on that year, but we had funded for full payments, and we're able to turn $400,000 into retained earnings, which changes our budget by 12%.
Well,
well, it doesn't change your budget, it changes what you actually spend compared to your budget. Yeah.
So, I mean, it may not be that dramatic in some of the departments where it may only be 1-2%, which isn't gonna move the needle.
Right.
But if there's a big shift, or they lay off a department, or
Yeah.
something else happens,
Yeah.
you do in the previous year, but the actual used out of that, that's,
Yeah,
just
so
thinking of
throughout,
questions before they get argued later on, because I like the idea of having formulas, so we don't do this every single year. We just look at it every 5-10 years, like, does it still fit? And
We'll have to be doing
Get
this
us
in
forward.
August. It's for the following year.
This is the closest I think we've ever been,
Yes.
like this.
Yes, I agree.
I'm very happy with how we got to here, like this is.
so to answer your question, a lot of the numbers in there are budgeted numbers.
Okay.
So if you're gonna see as you flip through that, especially when you get to the different town departments, there are different expense areas, and you can see the actual account number, and the dollar amount right next to it represents the budgeted amount for that account number.
Okay.
There are other things in there, like, for example, if you're pulling, one of the things, like the insurance thing, that might be an actual number, that came off of a Maya schedule. So I think you're gonna see a mix, but mostly you're gonna find budgeted numbers in there, and it is, I think, clear for that piece, but if you're
There is
asking,
one.
if you're asking for a specific cost, like some of the treasurer stuff in there, I think you can't go off a budgetary number, because it's a specific cost to,
No, I understand, but just for instance, in this, my cost per gallon, I'm having to go and do the numbers out. Where does it derive from? If all the other ones are deriving their cost from their budget, and this is their percentage out of that budget, so,
so do you normally calculate a cost per gallon? Or is,
usually,
so this would be something outside of that?
yeah. I don't have one offhand, but it's gonna be easy enough, my total gallons pumped for what our budget,
Right.
Or,
I think budget would be fine in that case, but I guess we'll see what the number ends up.
Yeah. Come up with a number that's actually got the town paying us instead, the other way around. But yeah, and it shouldn't be that way.
no, and I think you're gonna probably have to
I get it.
adjust some of this,
I
depending
understand
on
where
where it
it's
is.
coming from.
Yeah, I think if we took this without this formula, without making any changes to methodology and just plugged in some realistic numbers, I think it will probably be a fair number.
It'll give us an idea, yeah.
I don't know. I hope so.
I mean, just looking at it from a mathematical standpoint, it makes sense to me, that's why I'm.
Because from my mindset, it just makes my head spin. Numbers.
Yeah, I tend to get very detailed. You probably know that about me by now, so there's a lot in here. And the treasurer can be pretty detailed too, so we got in the weeds maybe more than we should have. But there's a lot in there.
Not surprised. Did I say that out loud?
You know, so we were going line by line. We were going budget line by line, and then we were coming up with different methodologies, or even in some of the budgetary line items, we were segregating the costs and allocating them differently. I mean, it's all in there. It's just, you know, it's a lot to go through.
Okay,
So, I know we're in full-on budget season. You're talking about your budget right now. The indirects are part of your budget. What's the I guess the plan related to this as you see it going forward? That would just help me.
Do you see it, I mean, obviously the hydrant credit is gonna bring the number down. Do you see it exceeding the numbers that you presented to us here on page 1?
Is that a question for me?
Yeah. Like, could we carry these numbers?
yeah, that number,
Because the credit is just gonna bring that number down, so you
That-
budget this, knowing that's the high end of what,
Well, the credit, there is a number in there today. If you look on page 1,
right? Yeah, you got 20, I think we got
24,000.
24,000.
that's based on what, if you were to flip to that hydrant credit sheet, you can see how it's calculated.
But that's your guess numbers.
It's not,
Yeah.
you could say it's a guess. It's a wild guess, yes. Whether it's gonna be more or less, I don't know.
I was playing around with it earlier, and if you put some real numbers, it makes that number go up, so.
Meaning higher than 24?
credit, yeah.
Right. That would be my guess too, but I don't know. And then also, this has been shared with town staff, but I haven't discussed this most recent version with them. So I guess my overall question related to that is, how does something like this get adopted? Is it just, and this may not be an easily answerable question.
And that's the right, both sides have to accept it.
Right. So what if I have a conversation with town staff tomorrow? I'm not saying this will happen, and there's, maybe one of these methodologies gets challenged and wants to be changed. So then what happens then? I mean, I'm not expecting an answer related to that. I just want you to be aware that, like, for example, this hydrant rental thing, the town treasurer and I talked about it. I just laid out the methodology that we came up with, but we talked about a methodology. We didn't talk about numbers. So once they see the numbers, what's the reaction? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
Tell you their reaction.
I hate calling.
Right now, the way this goes, if we're charging them cost to produce per gallon, we win. So there's gonna be we're gonna take some consideration into, we flushed a system for the hydrants and everything else, but it also benefits us at a certain point, because just the rough numbers at right now is the cost is $228,000 to you guys, to the town. Cost per gallon is 0.016. And what's allocated to the town, to the firefighting and the main flushing is 14.25 million gallons.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that the unaccounted for?
That's in the annual, that's not unaccounted for, that's accounted for water.
That's the amount of
that's-
water that gets used for flushing and firefighting?
That is accounted for in the annual statistic report to the state. Yes,
For those purposes?
for those purposes.
Really? Okay. So if you're saying that you just kind of did a dry run on that methodology and you came up with $228,000?
Yeah.
Okay. That's not gonna work.
No, that-
To flush
Like I
a
said,
hydrant, you need to flush it a certain.
You could punch numbers in there and, keep trying to come up with something that's fair. And,
Trying, but that attempt
was
didn't work
really
if
fair
those are
for
what the
us.
numbers are.
yeah, no kidding. And I can,
As much as we
go
technically
out on a
want to
limb
hold
and
that
say
back, it doesn't
we
help us.
don't have to ask them
It saves us
because we know
time
the
just doing the
answer
rough
already.
number right now. That's, yeah.
I can hear the answer already coming through the wall from the empty office.
I don't, people don't understand or appreciate the volume of water we have to do to flush the system. So, you're running a hydrant for upwards of 30 to 45 minutes at a time, at over 500 gallons per minute.
A lot of water.
It's a lot of water, very quickly on 360 plus-ish hydrants.
So what is the amount of water attributed to just firefighting?
1.75 million.
0.75 million.
That's a much lower number. So most of it's related to hydrant, or,
That's attributed to firefighting. Okay.
well, 1.75 out of 14.25
No,
is
yes,
firefighting.
Yes, firefighting. Hydrant flushing, 12.5.
For hydrant flushing.
Yep.
That's an annual number?
That was our last annual number.
What's,
Historically, it would be roughly the same. You have the same roughly number of hydrants, and you do them for roughly the average same amount of time.
The hydrant flushing benefits us too. So
What was that?
hydrant flushing
But-
benefits us too.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it'd be fair if we,
is it like, it's a
50-50.
percent, that's a percent of that,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So-
probably more like 20/80.
well, no, because it still benefits
Yeah.
the hydrants, and they need the hydrants. So
It's part of the maintenance program on the hydrants. We are also looking at a full-on, a better maintenance program. We need to have one developed, but we've been short-staffed for the past 3 years, and plus that, and along with the construction. Once things settle down, it's probably one of the areas that we're gonna look at. Along with, you have things like valve exercising, which also, while benefits us even more in the end, but it does benefit the whole, the system too, where you have to be able to shut off the hydrants. So, we're talking thousands of gates in town versus just 300, 400 roughly hydrants. So,
George said something last month, he said it was over 500 now,
what,
hydrants?
I wanna say 360-ish?
I thought you
Right
said
near there.
around 350 last time.
Number 4.
Yeah, I have it right here. 350 was the number I wrote down.
Yeah. For some reason, I have 358 stuck in my mind, but that could be just because things are rattling.
That could be right. I think 350 might be a rounded number.
Okay. All right, we gotta come up with something in the next couple of weeks. Right up against it again.
what are we asking him to present to the town? Can't, unless you're gonna,
Yeah, so I guess I'm just looking for a little bit of guidance. I do realize where we are in the season, so, but what the board thinks are next steps related to this, if any at all.
I had a chance to review this today, and from start to finish, 90% of this, I agree with the methodology through it, so. There are a few things that I don't, but it's gonna be the same thing on the other side. It's gonna be, 10% that doesn't agree, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the goal here is to try and come up with something, DOR's term, fair and reasonable, right? It's not gonna be
No.
perfect. Not everyone's
If
gonna
sides
love
are
it.
unhappy, then it's reasonable.
I guess that's a good way to put it, yeah. So that's, and obviously a lot of work went into this. We feel like we're as close as
Appreciate
we've
it.
ever been.
Yes.
And, I wish, like the chairman said, if maybe if we were going over this a few months earlier, that'd be ideal, but here we are.
This would be a whole lot easier to deal with in August on a patio with cold beverages.
That is an option. We could,
Yeah,
we
no.
could say, let's just use last year's numbers or the last year's methodology and then fine tune this over the next few months. I guess that is an option.
Yeah, I don't-
Well, it's for the town, but not a sewer use, water users.
Well, you do have a,
Saving
you do have a
money.
methodology that's been used for
Yeah.
many years now that technically could still be used if you want.
Okay,
Do you need a motion?
I think we need to come up with true numbers first,
yeah.
right?
Well, I was saying, do we need a motion that we accept this methodology, regardless, the numbers don't?
I like the methodology.
Well, it seems to me like that hydrant credit needs to be tweaked just a little bit, because I think the current methodology is,
It's gonna be well in our favor.
right.
No, I agree though. I mean, at least it's somewhere. I mean,
I looked, I've been, I've had some thoughts in my head. I've had a number in my head for a number of weeks that I'd like to see, but we've got to be able to justify it. And, you know,
For-
just to throw a number, just just because, isn't acceptable either.
A number related to what, Mr. Chairman, the credit or something
Yeah, the
else?
credit.
Okay.
But, you know, it's like, how can, you know, you can't justify it, then it's unreasonable. So. But, you know, 240,000 is also not acceptable either. I get that. So we've got to figure something out and pretty quick. I don't know, what's the pleasure? How are we gonna, I hate to have another meeting before the 28th.
Do you have any ideas on how you would tweak that hydro rental knowing actual numbers now?
Based on the conversation tonight, I guess we could possibly look at decreasing the gallonage that we're including here. I think the firefighting number, including that, makes sense. And then maybe a subset of the hydrant flushing. I mean, that was talked about earlier, how it technically benefits both sides, right? So,
Yeah.
but
Would, I'm
How do
just
we
throwing
do
this out
that?
there. Would, like, say we have actual cost of a hydrant install, would a 50-50 split be a reasonable split, or so you could throw a percentage at it and be like, whatever it costs in, you know, fiscal
Well,
year,
it's a,
you know, 20% benefits us, 80% benefits firefight, I don't know. I don't know how we would, I just want something that's in there that says, like, take this number, use that percentage, and it just
Yeah, he's
calculates.
asking about the flushing, right? With that number.
well, using the full flushing number, if we were to use it, just throws this number. It makes
Yeah,
it too high.
that's-
So,
Yeah.
We want 50-50 on the flushing, because it benefits both of us.
okay, but it's still a number that's over $100,000, which is basically what the indirect number is today. So, I don't think that would work either. So we're trying to find something.
You just take flushing out of it.
I wrote it down here, I wasn't gonna say it out loud, but, I'll be honest, you don't need clean water to fight a fire.
No.
The flushing does maintain the system, but doesn't matter what color the water is when it's coming out of a fire hose.
But it,
just allocated to the fire department.
Really doesn't.
1% is 28,000 for their allocated, what the state allocates them for their usage and training. That's taking out the flushing, just so we know where we're at. So,
$20,000.
28,000.
That's getting,
But does that include the meter stuff too?
What?
Not meters, the hydrant cost as well, or just water?
That's just the water that is allocated to them in the ASR, in the annual statistical report.
So you did a quick calc,
Of the 170, 1.75 million times the .016.
The cost of water that you
Yeah,
came up with,
so,
without anything related to the hydrants at the top of that sheet,
no,
dollars there.
no.
Okay.
Put
And
that into the,
So hypothetically, would that be a better methodology? We just calculate the cost of the water and,
Well, I would, yes, but the hydrant flushing is part of the maintenance program. So I would
yeah.
say that 10% of the overall flushing
Is
benefits
the fire department.
that portion of our system that is dedicated to firefighting. I don't think it'd be higher than that. Because otherwise we're flushing the system, to flush out our pipes, the biofilm, make sure we get
To
better
keep them
chlorine
clean.
residuals, so things like
it's to
that.
maintain the pipe itself, but the actual water, it don't matter what the water looks like.
The benefit side on the fire department, as much as I'd like less off of our budget, is for the maintenance program is tied to that while we're there. We're checking to see if the hydrant works, if it's flowing correctly, if it flows at the correct volumes, and things like that.
so I have a follow-up question. If you're saying no more than 10%,
I would say if I personally had to say where it benefits, it'd be a 90-10.
so what is if the 10% represents firefighting, what does the 90% represent?
To the water system and our availability to deliver clean water.
Okay. So the 10% would be 10% of the 14.25 number you gave earlier?
No, that would be part of the flushing program is 12.5 million.
Okay, so it'd be 10% of that.
So roughly that was 200,000, so that'd be another 20,000 attributed to the fire department.
On top of the number you already gave.
Yeah, so that would be 20,000 towards the fire, 28,000 for the fire protection and training, or the firefighting and training, and hydrant maintenance and flushing and use of the water to do that would be 20,000.
Ish, yeah. You get exactly.
Well, it's 10%,
Yeah,
it'd
yeah,
be 200,000, I mean.
Yeah, I mean, this is nothing, none of this
That's-
is exact.
That's with 48 there. So if we adopted that method that way, figuring 1 out of 3, or on average, if we can catch them, hopefully, is a hydrant, and calling a hydrant roughly around $5,000 to replace and or install, then do we attribute that into just the flushing and maintenance program of it, like, and we give them the hydrant, and we have a much easier formula. We don't have to do everybody's salary, who's changed, union contracts, or anything else. We just use the ASR from the year before, and what we allocated to them, and then we're done. It's a very simple formula the way you drew it at that point, once we have the percentages and what's allocated one side or the other.
I like that. It ties it back to the ASR, so
Yeah.
data that's. gonna be
Again,
there.
if we start doing the previous years and looking at that, it's an easiest methodology.
Because the cost of the water, the .01 whatever per gallon, that cost does include the hydrants in the system.
What?
The cost of
Yes.
generating the water.
Yeah.
That includes the maintenance of the network, so
Yes.
that's what the cost of the
General
water
operating
is.
expenses covering the repair parts on the hydrants and changing
That's
and
what
restocking
the
and
cost
things
of
like
the
that.
water is, so.
Yeah.
Okay,
I think it's nice that we're down to the point where we're arguing just percentages and not who's doing what and whatever else, so.
right.
Well, that was kind of my
That's
point
the
earlier.
night, I think,
Right.
what-
I think we're seeing
Yeah.
some.
Yeah.
yeah. So, now it's just getting comfortable with,
Yeah,
as long as there's not a big percentage, argument, I mean, if you're arguing over 1% and it's $100,000 indirect, you're arguing over $1,000. I mean, it,
In a $3 million budget, yeah.
do you want to go to war and have animosity over $1,000 in a budget? So our
budget.
budgets are 2.8 million and 26 million?
Okay. All right, so that gives you some numbers to,
Yeah,
does that give you something to work with?
I had a little trouble following some of that.
What? What part?
I'm sorry. You had me when you were going over the gallonage, and then when you got into percentages, that's where I got lost. So can you just help me with that? I'm sorry.
Oh, so you can explain it back. So we're flushing. I would personally say that where the benefit lies from, because while we're flushing, our flushing is our hydrant maintenance protocol as it is. So as we're flushing, we're checking the hydrants, making sure everything works, and if we have to, we mark it and we go back later on and fix it. Also, that makes sure that the water's available to be delivered to the fire department and or do whatever they need to do with it. So the benefit on the flushing the system is much more heavily on our side to be able to deliver potable water. Well, the small percent of only like 10% where I feel
Yeah.
comfortable is
Yeah.
the maintenance program and the time spent in doing that. And
Yeah.
that would involve, that's what I'm saying, changing out a hydrant and everything else. I think that would be a good way to encompass it. Because if you put a hydrant in there along with, into that $20,000 mark, you're using, because it's the time, like, you don't have to sit there and go, well, I was here for 30 minutes, but, you know, hey, 3 minutes of this, you know, let's figure out how long, you know, each one. So I think it'd be it's a fair starting point of where it would be for cost on the flushing system.
Okay, so you're saying the gallonage for flushing related to fire hydrants,
Yes,
include that, and you're saying the cost to replace the hydrant, include that? Is that what you're
I
saying?
would put the cost to replace the hydrant as part of the flushing program.
We're taking the gallons of waters expended flushing and the firefighters using it, and multiplying that times a cost per gallon. That cost per gallon includes maintenance of the system, the maintenance of the pipes, and replacing the hydrants and doing all of that other stuff.
So you,
That's all built into the cost.
okay, so I think you're arguing not to include the cost of the hydrant. Is that
Right,
what you're
yes.
saying?
Right.
Okay.
But yeah,
Take the cost,
That's what I was totally confused.
no.
take the cost per gallon, basically from, and then we're taking a percentage of that towards firefighting and flushing.
Yes. The firefighting and flushing, they pay their cost per gallon.
Yeah,
And on the flushing portion, they pay 10% of that.
yeah.
That rolls in the changing out a hydrant, you know,
That includes, that's the maintenance of this,
the maintenance
If you
and,
take cost per gallon, you're encompassing all the costs associated with a hydrant. And then,
for generating that gallon of water.
Okay, so we're down to just the cost of water at this
Right.
point?
yeah.
yeah.
Okay. No dollars, just whatever the cost of water is times the gallonage, okay.
And that's right off the annual statistic.
But you're saying the cost per gallon, you're saying to include the gallons related to firefighting,
Yes,
and you're saying the gallons related to, we'll say, you're saying 10%
Of flushing.
of flushing,
no flushing,
and that's it,
from the annual statistical report.
right, which varies year to year,
Yes.
okay.
They
But
typically stay the same, but it's,
based on your calcs already, that's somewhere in like the $40,000, $50,000 range,
yes,
right?
as of right now.
Okay, so that's a big change,
That's a big change, yes.
yeah. Okay,
It's been 10 years since, from the 15. I mean, that's,
That 15 was generated in 2009, 2010?
the digging that really the town treasurer
That's
did
15 years
came up
ago.
with 10,100 something as of FY10, and we think that might have been the first year, but we're not sure.
I thought it was earlier than that, but that's, yeah.
It could have been. I
That's-
mean, that's not a round number.
And that's just, and I believe that was just a number that was thrown at the wall.
Could have been.
That number stuck, and that's what they used.
But you get methodology for the new number, it's not a guess.
Yeah, but, you know, the indirects, I'm just taking from the other side. Indirects have been somewhere around 100,000 to 110,000 in the last 2 or 3 years. And if you introduce this and,
Previous to that, they were around 50,000.
okay,
They jumped big all at once.
okay. But if this gets introduced and.
And that's
part-
why we got upset.
Right, so now you're back down to the 50,000 if this goes through, and that's just on the water side. The sewer
Sewer is sewer.
calculations,
Yeah,
similar calculation, just doesn't have a credit right now.
Right,
So the
Correct.
the sewer number is gonna be a lot higher for the indirects if this were to be included.
right.
I personally agree with the methodology getting to the point of hydrant rental.
Yeah.
I think
But-
that's the,
why would the number go up on the sewer?
It's,
Sewer doesn't have a
there's no-
water credit.
there's no
I know,
credit.
but it wouldn't go up more than, what are you saying?
No, the sewer number is the sewer number.
Yeah.
Whatever's presented there.
I thought you said it's gonna go up.
No, no, no.
Oh, okay.
No, it would be
Yeah.
higher than the water number.
Yeah,
Right now, they're pretty similar.
Yeah.
Today, I think water is slightly higher, even with the credit in there. I think.
think sewer was a little higher.
A little higher, okay,
Yeah.
but they're in the same ballpark.
Yeah, but they were right around each
yeah,
other, but
101
yeah.
and 106.
Okay, with this, that's gonna skew water way down compared to sewer. Okay.
Okay,
We can present it, I can't, I don't know. I don't know what the reaction will be, but we can put it together.
well, I think both methodologies we agree with, like what you have presented here and what Brian's talking about now. Both of those make sense. We can defend it, we can, you know, we can pull actual numbers to it. But it does increase the credit, so.
It does, but I think also if we take and enroll the hydrants into the flushing program, that's gonna be a bigger variable where everything changes the cost, and we're gonna have to research it if we change employees or structure or anything else versus we have a state report that everybody can refer to that's out there, and we have a timeline of having it done.
Scott.
And it will be done every year, so.
Yeah.
I think we're at the point of arguing percentages versus the overall things, which is nice, like I said before.
okay. Well, we could throw this, I'll be in the building tomorrow. Yay. But.
Yep.
All right, well, we're getting somewhere. All right, do we need to do anything else as far as this is concerned?
Just big picture, I mean, I know with deadlines and all that, but what are your thoughts going forward for?
The rest of it, I mean,
I'm in agreement with the rest of it. I think the only thing that's in flux right now is the hydrant rental health methodology, but
I'd like to change the name of that too. It's not a rental,
yeah.
but it's, you know,
Oh,
offset.
yeah. Okay, what would you like to call it?
Just rental just sounds,
I think it should be just fire protection, because that's what it provides.
fire
the town.
protection offset.
That's the service we're providing, is fire protection.
Right.
Okay,
Sounds a little
That's
better than just hydrant
easy
rental,
change.
just sounds, I don't know.
So I guess, from my attitude, it would be present the,
George isn't here. Where are we here in Scanner? Oh, it's in the back.
present the methodology we came up with tonight, and see where it lies, and then we go back to it unless,
Yeah.
yeah, okay, I mean, we're trying to come up with fair methodologies, right? Mm-hmm. And we're also trying to not have drastic swings from where things are today, so.
Right.
This represents, in my opinion, a little bit of a drastic swing, but we'll see where it goes.
Yeah.
Okay, so does that mean I can coordinate with Jen, but should I plan to come back before you? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, we do a court
You're
meeting
gonna
next
have,
week.
you will have to have a decision.
By
I believe it's the 28th that the budget has to be in.
28th, which
The
is,
Friday,
huh?
which is the Friday.
Friday.
You can have a meeting on the 26th, but it would be in the back room.
Well,
Doesn't matter what room
It's
it's
gonna be
in.
quick, yeah.
playing devil's advocate here, wouldn't we just carry the current methodology number until this is adopted? Because it's not adopted yet, because it has to be adopted on both sides.
You still have to vote on the budget regardless.
Right.
So you just carry.
And that was my thought, just carry the flat, the flat number until
Till it changes.
it changes. I mean, if it changes down, it's great. If it changes up, then we have a problem. We can go down at town meeting. We can't go up.
So you're saying adjust it down at town meeting? If we get a number?
If we get, yeah, if we can go back and forth with the methodology and the numbers until we get to an agreement. But in the meantime, we have to put a budget together. We're either gonna come back again next week or let the budget go with what's there. And I think he's put in the he put in the 106.
We can adjust that to whatever we have right now, just to
Yeah.
make sure we cover it.
106 is higher than, as long as we don't go up.
Mr. Chairman, what does the 106 represent?
No, 101.
Well,
It
it
was
was,
just old numbers, we had
it's old numbers from last year.
from last
year's
year
number.
on the indirects.
Actually, it's 101.
So unrelated to the work that's before you? Okay.
Yeah, it was just a placeholder, really.
He just plugged in a number.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's,
I believe it was.
what is on this side, right?
Yeah, 105, okay. But, yeah. That may be the easiest, the best way to go through this, unless we want to have a meeting next week. I mean, I really don't want to, but
No,
if
but
we
we
need,
still need to address the.
Yep,
The
yep,
budget by the 26th, so
right.
we need a meeting next week.
Unless you just carry the current indirect
And
number.
unless we carry the numbers that are there and approve this budget as it sits. It's pretty much done, except for, I can't believe we got the rich numbers, the
I
treasurer.
mean, it's only
numbers.
gonna be, if we get a number, it's fine next week. If they agree, hopefully, and we plug in the right number, that we get the,
In theory, the new methodology, it would go down if we carry last year's. So if you carry last year's, you're carrying more in the budget than necessary.
Mm-hmm, which is fine. We can carry more, we just can't carry less.
Correct. Do you need a motion?
I don't know, I've been pretty quiet over there.
Just thinking linear footage and everything, that's all. Running numbers in my head.
I mean, that's,
You can always overfund it,
we can overfund, yes, but we don't wanna underfund.
or we can keep it at 100,000 and put, so he can't come in, because the indirect line, I believe, gives him ability to come in and just take what he wants. Fund the capital line item by an extra $10,000 and park the money there, so we can move it later on if we have to.
That's a smart way to do it. We know the indirect's gonna be around 100,000. Plug 100,000 in there.
Personally, I don't,
yeah, we don't know
the
that.
financial situation of the town and whatnot, I foresee some pushback and some negotiations still going, and/or asking for consideration to wait until FY '27 so they can budget it better, because I don't know how tight they are this year with everything else that's going on.
That gives us time to finalize the methodology and then get both sides to
So-
agree.
If you wanna look at the scenarios that could happen, come up on floor and everything else.
So, I mean, it's up to,
No, we schedule a meeting if we,
I'm not around next week.
all right.
so,
I don't want it to fall by the wayside for another year, because we're gonna keep negotiating for the year.
Right.
Okay, we've got a budget. I mean, we have to have an approved budget to present. So,
So could we,
other than that number in yellow, everything else, and the adjustment to,
The electrical.
no, was
yeah, on the water side?
Chemicals.
chemicals on water.
No, the chemicals and electrical.
Yep, so, other than that, it's just, how do we wanna deal with that number?
If we're, because we're under the gun to get the budget in, I think we take that indirect number and we plug it in at 100,000 and we put the extra over on capital. So it guarantees, the town's gonna take 100, and then we can continue to negotiate, and we have some
Okay.
leverage.
Now, playing devil's advocate, through the chair, they take the 100,000 and they negotiate down, are we gonna get their money back?
Well,
No.
we could actually, we could budget the sewer.
Yeah, sewer
Yeah,
does
the
not
sewer-
have a hydrant rental.
Yeah,
So you could take the 106, 748, based on the current methodology, plug that in there, because we know that's gonna be, we're willing to accept that more than likely, and the town's probably more than, is the town more than willing to accept on that side, if you had conversations?
That's about what it was this year.
Um,
It was 101, it's up 5,000.
I've had conversations with the town treasurer, but we were focused on his budget, his area.
Yeah.
Had conversations with specific budgetary line items with the assistant town administrator, but that was focused on the town administrator's area. Have not had full discussions on everything you see here. But it has been sent to them. I don't know if I'll get any feedback. I
I'm
don't,
thinking that, there's not a drastic change there, it's kind of in line of where it's been, so.
on the sewer side, yes. The hydrant credit may throw the water one in a different direction, but yes, I agree with you on sewer.
Okay, so, somebody care
Yeah.
to make a motion about
So
with
I
the
can
sewer
make a
budget?
motion here, so I'll make a motion that we accept the sewer budget as presented, changing the indirect to 100,006,748.
That's an increase of about $700. A little less than $700.
Second that.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Halfway there. Okay, and so then now we're on to the water.
So we could do this, instead of doing 100,000, we could do the 83,683, knowing that's a truly arbitrary number. Because if it's gonna go down, it's probably not gonna go down more than that.
that'd be roughly just the water use on the fire use. That was at what do you have, 24,000 in there, and that's 28,000?
So
Yeah, so,
I guess I just have a question on the water, that number. If we had stated with the 15,000, which is what it has been, the water number would be
So, Mr.
about
Chair,
93.
so, Mr. Chairman, the way that my understanding is they take that 15,000, it gets increased 2.5% per year.
Yep.
Um,
But if we took that 15,000 and plugged that into here, that number would, instead of being 83, would be about 90,
I'll calculate it for you right now.
92.
Yeah, because if we carried that,
So if you were to increase it by the 2.5% that has become standard, that number is 16,261, the credit,
Yep.
and the total in that case would be 91,421.
Okay, so,
and my argument also why that 2.5 doesn't work anymore is at that point, the budget for the water department was 1.1 million, and now we're at 2.6 to 2.8 million dollars a year because of the new regulations and the PFAS things that were put on us in order to produce the water. So
Our costs
we
have
far
gone up
exceeded
drastically.
the normal increase of costs,
Oh,
unfortunately.
I don't disagree with anything you're saying. 2.5, yeah,
So,
it seems low.
Okay, so what, in order to present a budget, what number do we want to punch in? I know last year we put in
So here's what-
56, and they just ignored it and put in whatever they wanted
Yeah. So
anyways.
So here's what I would propose, and I can make the motion once we,
Sure.
so we would change chemicals to 155.
yep,
So it'll only be a 3% increase versus the
Right.
8, and change the indirects to the 93, whatever,
The number that I just said?
yeah, what was that?
91,421.
91,421.
That's if you take the FY '25 hydrant credit,
Right.
increase it by 2.5%, and use all the other numbers that I have in here.
And then I would add, to protect us, in case that number goes up, we would add it to capital, the balance of this 105.
Which would be, so we'll just say 15,000.
Yeah, so add 15,000 to capital, and now we can firm up that fire protection credit.
You wanna pay them 91,000?
To put it into the budget so that we have a number
Yeah.
there. That would be the number based on the,
Current methodology.
based on this new methodology,
Minus the hydrant.
minus the hydrant, and at the current rate.
It's
We're
still-
still trying to negotiate the hydrant number.
It
if
still
that
includes a
number-
hydrant number, but just based on how the hydrant is currently calculated.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, I could go along with that. 91,000.
Do you want that in a motion?
I'm leery that we're gonna get stuck with the 2.5% on the 15 going forward
It's,
forever.
it's still, if we look at it this year based on last year, it's an improvement. It's a drastic improvement. If that's what it ends up at. We were at 105 last year, we're talking about 91, that's a $14,000 cut. So the numbers changed and brought it down some. It's not as much as I would like to see, but it is, it's, just gets us a budget that we can present, and then we can try to work that fire protection number.
I disagree.
I can make the motion if you want.
It's up to you.
So, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion, we accept the presented water department budget, making the changes to the chemicals line at 155,000, making the change to the indirect line at 91,421, and increasing the capital line by 15,000 to 65,000.
Is there a second? Well, I'll second it for discussion purposes anyways. So, how do we want to deal with it?
I think we ought to have him present it and see where we stand. I'm just leery that they're gonna say, you know, all right, we'll take this 91 and there's your credit that you're asking for. And we're gonna be stuck with the same number for years to come.
This methodology now has a whole bunch of numbers in it that are fluid, that they will be changed, they're variables.
But if you
This
take-
number will be variable as well.
But if you take out, if they disagree to the flow numbers of the,
Then we have to come up with another
methodology.
We come up with a methodology that works, that's mutually agreeable. I mean, we can dig our feet in the sand, we can dig in and just keep fighting and never get anywhere, or we can try to work it. I think it's a good faith effort. We can work and try to get the best we can for the users. But this isn't August or September or October.
But we could have, if they come back, we could have a quick meeting next week just to yay and nay.
Okay,
That's what I'm thinking. Do you have any opinions?
I mean, if it's a variable number, it's gonna move. So,
it sure is.
a
I
couple
mean,
other ways we could do it, but it's just gonna take a little effort to get there.
mhm.
But as long as it's not, like you said, stuck with the 2% for the next
That's my
12
opinion.
years. As
There,
long as you write it off as a variable.
none of,
But if
like
they
I
come
said,
back
all
and
these
they-
numbers are variable. That number is going to be variable as well. It's gonna
But
have
if
to
they
be.
come back and totally dismiss the flow use for that, then where do we stand?
Then we stand at 91,000. We stand $14,000 better than last year. And we continue to fight over it. I don't know, we've
know, it's been a long-
we've been dug in for
been a long-
6, 7 goddamn years now, and I'm just getting tired.
I know,
I'm getting tired.
believe me.
I'm done fighting. So,
Even with that 91,000, it actually works out to be a lower amount than what was in the FY '25 indirects.
mhm.
The FY '25 indirects total about 203,000. This ends up being 198, so it's a $5,000 savings even with that.
Between the
lower-
two departments,
But
right?
it's never been a good number for the hydrants.
And again, that has to be negotiated. It's gonna go back and forth, and we've got a week, and nothing moves that fast. So, I don't know.
I say give it, I'm stuck in giving it a chance. If he, yeah, I mean, are you gonna contact him in the week? I'm sorry, I don't, to put the pressure on you, but are you gonna,
It sounds like this group is interested in the methodology that was discussed tonight for the hydrant or fire protection
Right?
credit offset. So my thinking was that if you're really interested in it and you want to bring it forward, then yes, I would have to probably write it up, put it in an email, send it to town staff, and try and get some feedback and offer to meet with them on it if they want. I mean, to me, that's the logical next step. But I don't know where it's gonna go from there.
Okay. So we're either gonna approve the budget for presentation, or we're going to have another meeting next week.
You can always change it before we present it. So if you approved it now, the form that it's in, and they came back and did a hard no, or yes, we will, or ask for other considerations, as long as you have a meeting posted, you can come in, do a quick meeting, and vote to amend it. But if you guys, if right now, if we're gonna keep going on, and we have to present a budget, last year, we presented a budget, we had a number in that line item, it went to town floor, and it got changed. So that's always.
It got changed to town
before
floor.
it went to town floor.
Before,
And we had-
it got voted in at a different amount.
Yeah, and I didn't.
That affected the overall budget because it shifted $50,000 in each department.
Right, but it didn't get voted to raise it at town floor. It was changed before it went to town floor.
Yes, it was.
I'm only bringing up what we had to deal with in our
Yeah.
yearly budget and what we were able to do with the departments.
Right. Okay, so there's a motion on the floor, motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nay. Oops, sorry.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay. So, we don't have a budget for water.
I'm sorry. Yea and nay. I didn't hear.
Yay, yeah.
Oh,
He went-
oh, you did?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I didn't hear it. I'm sorry.
I was-
my bad.
That's what I'm like,
It's-
I'm like, sitting here
all
going,
right.
I had 3-1, what am I missing?
All right, it's 3-1. And we'll continue to negotiate the fire protection offset.
Okay.
Sorry, I've been going since 3 o'clock this
No, I
morning.
understand, I understand.
Tired.
Okay, well, first off, thank you, and then second, because you adopted the budgets, I guess there's not an immediate need for me to come back before you, right? So maybe what's the best course of action? Is it to keep Jen updated and Jen will keep you updated?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, please.
Keep sending the emails, and
I forward it right out to
she
them.
forwards it. It comes in, it goes right back out again.
okay, and then if,
I had a conversation the other day on the phone, and I said, yeah, okay, I'll have that done. And then I hung up the phone, and I said, hey, could you, yeah, it's already done. She did it while I was.
oh, yeah, okay. And then if you're interested in meeting with me again, maybe just let her know and she can let me know?
Yeah.
Does that work?
Yeah,
Okay, great, thank you.
okay?
Yeah, I'm good.
Thank
Okay.
you. We appreciate it.
All right. Because there's some confusion as to the job description, I'm gonna propose that we hold off on the primary distribution operator update until for 2 weeks. till our next
Table
meeting.
until April.
There's any board comments?
Thank you.
The warrant article,
Has there been any movement on,
the warrant article?
oh, the warrant article, I'm sorry, yes. There were 2 warrant articles that are being proposed for the town meeting for money. We voted to spend this money out of retained earnings last year.
Correct.
And rather than being placed in articles to be spent the way it was supposed to be, it was placed in the engineering line item,
Correct,
which went unspent
right.
and got returned to retained earnings.
So now our sewer engineering line item is over because we've been pulling from there for this because we don't have an article. So we'd like to fund that and then have an article
Okay.
for the rest of it. It still ends up to the $250,000 that we,
Yeah, we talked about this last meeting.
right, and I just did up the warrant articles so that,
So there is,
You need a motion on this. So you need 2 separate motions here, right?
correct.
Okay. So I'll make a motion to see if the town will transfer $100,000 from retained earnings account 006000359001 to sewer article, the purpose of design and bidding services for the Potash Brook Interceptor.
Second.
okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 4-0.
I'll make a motion to see if the town will transfer $150,000 from retained earnings from account 006000359001 to sewer engineering account 00604405702000 for purpose of design and bidding services for Potash Brook Interceptor.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 4-0.
Thank you very much, just so I
Okay.
can get that in.
Any other comments or concerns?
Nope.
After.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
Well, you did it last time, why don't you do it this time? I'll
Okay.
second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Good thing. All right, we're